All right, so we're back for round two here. We got Jill Abby here with us today. And really excited to go a little bit longer with this. We've extended our podcast episode. Might be two, might be one. We'll see what happens. Thank you again, Jill, for taking time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure, Dave.
The one thing I heard somebody say, Jill, is that I think it was my wife and I love watching Queer Eye. It is the best show.
Yes.
And I watched parents and children navigate this whole process. And I think it was one of the guys on the show was talking to a student who had come out, and he said, it's not actually coming out, it's me letting you in. He said, because if I come out to you, there's a chance you might reject me. But if I let you in, then I'm in control of this. And I'm like, whoa. Right? Like, that's a totally different perspective.
Absolutely.
Right? Because like Hadlee is putting herself out there to us with the potential of rejection in her mind. But if we were allowed to come into Hadlee's experience, then it's like admission only type thing, right?
Yeah. And I hear this story often, especially talking to other people in the queer community, where everyone's story deserves to be told, but not everyone deserves the right to hear it. So, and that's the thing, is that we can, in some ways, be selective about our audience. I love that quote from Queer Eye. I love the perspective of letting people in, that you become part of my circle, and that I'm welcoming you in. In all practical purposes, I still haven't entirely figured out how to do that, because like I said, there are some situations in life where my status as a lesbian just comes out, usually in medical settings or in office settings.
Like you talked about, to make the plumber or whoever come to your door,
right?
Can I speak to your husband? Right.
So, exactly. People just default to heterosexuality, and that's fine. I get that. That is the majority, and that's fine. But every time I have to make the quick decision in my mind of, what do I say? Do I have to come out? Is there something I can say that doesn't out me?
Okay, so right there, let's pause for a second. So I never have to do that.
Right.
And right in there, I just saw something that's completely unfair. And just what you just said. Because I never have to say and explain that I'm married to my wife, Jen. And or come up with an excuse or be friends.
Right.
For
your safety.
I've never had to do that. For
your own preservation.
Right. And I've never had to self-edit.
Yeah.
Ever. So in that right there, you've just opened my eyes and my heart even more, that the whole thing that Hadlee says, and I remember her saying something to me about, like you and mom, you never have to worry about somebody judging you about your sexuality when you walk down the street. And I'm like, but it didn't really mean as much as it does right now, speaking to you. I appreciated that.
There is a level of hypervigilance that comes with being part of the LGBTQ. And I don't think it's just our community. I think you find this in a lot of minority communities. A layer of hypervigilance where you're always scanning to make sure that you're safe or okay.
Your radar is going all the time. Yeah.
Right. Now, I will say I'm fortunate that I have come out in a time where we are so much more accepting and progressive. And I can go to the mall right now and every single store has something rainbow. Like we are drowning, we are dripping in rainbows right now in the United States. And that's amazing and it's awesome. But whereas my partner, Jen, she came out as a teenager and wasn't out for many years, and even still isn't as out as I am in many ways in her life, because it was much less safe. And so her level of hypervigilance is, I think, even higher than what mine is, because the world was not a safe place for her then. And I think you see that too with a lot of older people in the LGBTQ community or people who have been out for longer is that sometimes we don't hear their stories as much because there wasn't a safe place for them to be told. It doesn't mean that things were easier or different, or they just, there's so many people who are like, well, I have gay friends and they just don't make it a big deal. Well, they weren't allowed to. It wasn't allowed to be a thing. Like they've lived decades of their life having to make those constant decisions of, do I have to lie? How can I not reveal this to their HR departments, to their doctors, to their, applying to rent a place or try and get housing? I mean, you could lose all of those things just for the person you love.
Okay, so Jill, how do I, not just for Hadley's sake, but how do I become an ally in how I think and how I act? What do I need to do? I'm listening.
Dave, you are amazing.
Oh, I'm here. This is meant to be. I'm serious.
Gosh, I am.
It's not just for me though, it's for whoever's listening. Right?
Absolutely. No, that's why I'm so excited, because there's so many people that I'm sure that are sitting out there now and saying, but how does this involve me? Or why do I have to do this? Or how do I even do this? Where do I start?
Why should I care?
Why should I care? And to start to that point, there was a recent Gallup poll study where they found that 1 in 6 Gen Zers, so that's like age 18 to 23, identifies as LGBTQ. So 1 in 6 people out there, you are constantly in spaces, whether you know it or not, regardless of how that space may appear. It doesn't matter if it's a conservative space or a liberal space. 1 in 6 are LGBTQ. And so it matters. And there's so many, there's people who would like to pretend that it's not going to impact their life. But the reality is it could impact any of our lives at any point and in any way. So allyship is hugely important, especially to create those safe spaces for people to be able to come out or let people in. I honestly think one of the best things people can do as an ally, and honestly, it's probably one of the hardest, it's something I struggled with on my own before I came out, is just letting people know you're an ally. Like when I go into a business and there's a little sticker in the window that has the rainbow flag, or I go to a doctor's office and they have a tiny sticker on their pin that's the rainbow flag, to know that I can speak freely with that person. Just
like a big sigh of relief.
It is. It's like, you're safe with me. And I can't tell you that constant hypervigilance that is so exhausting, I can turn that off for that period of time. And I can just be myself. You don't have to do all the mental gymnastics of how am I going to explain why I'm not on birth control right now? There's so many.
Interesting. Oh man. Like you just keep saying more things that I'm like, and then add that to the list and that one.
And add that so many things. So I'm gonna have TikTok material for decades, because there's so much to discuss.
Wow.
But so I think, even if it's just posting, if you're on a social media platform and you just post a supportive picture or meme, free dad hugs, seeing that on somebody else's page can go such a long way for me to know that if I'm having a hard time, that's a person I know I can talk to or go to. And I think too, so you mentioned the preparation and the fear that Hadlee had, and that she defaulted to the worst case scenario. And I absolutely get that too. It's a chapter in my book that's called C in the Worst Case Scenarios. And so it's my ex-husband, Chris, and I came up with every way I thought he could possibly react to my coming out. My best case scenario is he'd go, "You're gay, I'm gay too. Let's go to Pride." I knew that was highly improbable. That was not what happened.
Yeah.
My worst case scenario is that, and he is a wonderful man, a wonderful human being.
Yeah.
And so my worst case scenario with him, I knew he's not the type to get violent or even really yell much for that matter, but was that he could say, get the hell out.
Yeah.
And then where do I go? What do I do?
Yeah.
What money? I'm a homeschooling mom. Like what, I had to prepare myself that realistically could potentially be the result. I had a bag packed, a go bag packed.
Hadlee had a bag packed too.
Yeah.
And that hurt me probably really deeply, that she had planned that far in advance.
Yeah.
As I think we sat there in silence for several minutes and I'm like, you're never going to be leaving here because I'm telling you to leave.
Mm-hmm.
You're free to do what you want to do, but that door is never locked to the front of our house. Yeah. This is your home. So, that's not happening, and I could see this from Hadlee as we kind of talk through that. Right. But to know that my daughter had her bags packed broke my heart.
I mean, there's a reason why in the United States, I believe it's 40% of homeless youth out there are LGBTQ.
My gosh, what a number.
And the reason for them being homeless, and again, there can be multiple scenarios involved along with the coming out process. There are higher rates of anxiety and depression and substance abuse because of having to carry that weight.
Yeah.
But kids who are on the streets because they didn't have a parent that said, I don't have all the answers. I don't know what I think about this, but you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about this.
Okay. So I have a question for you.
Sure.
Hadlee's in a relationship. She, we're trying to figure out, like, obviously we're working through and working with Hadlee, but now we have another person in the mix that I don't know. And it feels like I have to do it twice, right? Get to know this person.
Sure.
Where growing up, you have the mommy, daddy stories, everything, all that stuff.
Right.
As she's little, you just, we always joked that I would move in with Hadlee when I was old and she would have to take care of me. And I didn't care about her spouse. It didn't matter because I'm your responsibility. You have to take care of me. And she always laugh, right? And she promised me she would always do that. But now, how do I, as a parent, continue to build the bridge with Hadlee, but also now with this relationship? What do I do?
How would you do it if it was a boyfriend that she brought home?
I'd probably never let him in the house. To be honest, I'm always
sure there is.
Yeah, right.
That's
I always
true.
have that dad card.
There is
right?
Maybe a different standard there.
This is a little different. I got to be honest.
Sure, absolutely.
I want to build that bridge, Jill. I want it to be real. I don't want it to be fake.
Sure.
But I just don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Again, I think the biggest thing is just, again, I feel like it's so hard and it's so simple.
Yes.
Coming from a place of love and just knowing that this person that Hadlee cares about very much, that she's bringing home to you, how vulnerable that is for her, how vulnerable that is for her partner, her girlfriend. And that's a big thing that they're doing. They're letting you in.
Yeah.
So make some great dad jokes. I don't know, like, really, it's just the same.
Okay, they're right there. You just said it. It's the same.
It's the same.
It's not different.
Right. But girls get handsy too, so watch out. I mean, you can't just assume that about the boys. Sorry.
I love it. Okay, Jill, Um, let's talk a little bit about the book.
Sure.
I could talk to you probably for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it'll be the longest podcast
It's gonna be
in
like
history.
never ending still.
Yeah, we're back. So I don't want I appreciate your time. Let's talk about the book. Let's talk about
Sure.
all the great resources that you're utilizing, the spaces you're in,
Mhm.
and why you're doing it.
Sounds good. Well, so like I said, the book is a memoir. It's when I was originally writing it, and it's primarily, I go back into my life as a small child and different stages throughout, because I really had to piece together, like, how the heck did I get here? But it's primarily focused around my coming out process, and really what a process that is. I noticed the more people I spoke to who came out later in life, there were a lot of similarities and steps that we were all going through. And so I know, like, when Glennon Doyle came out with Untamed, that was like the book for the coming out late community that so many women have read and said, yes, okay. But then it's like, but what's next? And so my memoir kind of drills down into what the experience of coming out is like. And so some of the things that we talked about, like the hypervigilance, dissociation, it happened a lot. I started even getting into drinking at certain points, and then realized that, like, there was a lot that came out of the coming out process. Delayed adolescence is one of my favorites, and I do have a TikTok on that too. So
really,
people who, and I learned this actually from an episode of Queer Eye, people who come out later in life tend to go through kind of a regression, almost back to their teenage years. And the way it was explained on Queer Eye is that you go back to the age where you started denying yourself, where the lie really started, and almost like you're trying to live your life over. So, I bought the dumb sneakers and the dumb pants, and was like, I want my nose pierced, I'm going to color my hair, I'm going to shave my head, all those things. It's very common that a lot of late bloomers go through that. And so that was something I wanted to discuss in the book. Like, hey, Tiger, if you're going to go out and get a tattoo right now, this may be why.
Wow.
There's a lot that happens that we still don't have a lot of discussion around. So I was excited to discuss that in the book. But when I was deciding if I even wanted to make this a book, and I was like, okay, great. So this will be the primer for women, in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who are coming out as gay. So I have a readership of approximately 7 people. Why would I write this book? And then I started sharing my story just with friends or anyone who would be willing to read a chapter. And I realized that there was more universality to it, that a lot of us have parts of ourselves that we don't always feel comfortable bringing to light or letting people know about. Or that as parents, sometimes we have to make the hard decisions between what we need as a person versus the comfort of our family. Yeah. And how do you weigh out your truth and your happiness compared to what you need to provide for your family and your responsibility to your family? It's a book for parents or friends who have someone in their life who is coming out, and they're saying, why the heck are they getting their nose pierced and getting tattoos? Like, it explains so much of the process and why it's not as easy as opening the closet door. It is a big deal. It's a major life shift. It's a major identity shift. And so I hope that a lot of people will see themselves in the story, even if they're not LGBTQ. I think there will be a lot of pieces that they will say, I've felt that, I've been there.
Yeah.
I'm also a recovering perfectionist, so streams of perfectionism run through the story, and I have a very odd sense of humor, if you haven't picked up on already. So that is also throughout. Yeah.
It's
So
exciting.
so I'm excited for the book, but because Hay House is not coming out with a book until April of 2023, I wanted to be able to connect with people in the interim. And so that's why I set up my blog, Queer Abby. It was originally set up as Storyteller Soul. And then I started getting so many anonymous questions from people who were embarrassed to ask things or didn't know where they could, saying, can you help me out? Why is it that everyone's gay nowadays? Can I, as a business owner, support the LGBTQ if my business is located in a conservative area? Why, like my blog that's up now, why is there not a straight pride parade? Why don't we have straight pride month? Where's the straight pride flag? Hint, it's the ally flag. There is an actual flag for allies. You get your flag too.
There you go.
Yeah. So, so Queer Abby is for that. And then TikTok, I joined begrudgingly because I was told that it is a great platform if you're an author or if you're looking to sell books or even you're an aspiring writer and you want to connect with your audience. Boy, that algorithm is brilliant. And they will like niche you down to your people.
Oh, yeah.
And through TikTok, people have been able to submit questions to me, or I get feedback on like, this really resonated, or we have no idea what she's talking about here. So I love the platform. There's a lot of garbage out there, but there's so much quality content that I really love and enjoy on there as well.
One of the quotes I saw on your website, I don't know, sorry, I didn't get the name. It was a doctor's, when we know better, we do better.
Yeah. Dr. Maya.
Why does that, what does that mean to you? Like, why is that important?
Because we're never stuck. The person we are right now is not the person that we have to show up as tomorrow. Who you were to Hadlee on the day she came out is not the person that shows up for her today. Or the person who shows up for her tomorrow after you finally get some sleep. We can always do better, but in order to do better, we have to be allowed to learn and ask and make mistakes. And I think that's one of the areas where our culture and society is maybe going so wrong nowadays, is that it is becoming the fear battle of, I think this, well, I think that, and we just clash instead of saying, let me try and understand why you feel that way. Can we find a common ground? And learning and admitting when we're wrong.
Or when we don't know.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I don't know the answer to that.
Totally
I don't know what to
answer.
do. That's why there's podcasts. That's why there's authors.
Right.
That's why there's TikTok,
Right.
There's the answer is out there, and there's great people doing great things to help many people.
And even, in all, like, I do not want to come across as the self-proclaimed expert of all things LGBTQ. When I get a question for my blog that is not in my realm of knowledge, like I just had a blog up about being a transgender ally, was a question I got. I went directly to the transgender community, who I am so fortunate to have been able to connect with through TikTok, and said, what do you need from me? What do you need to hear? What do I need to do? How do I need to show up? And what do I need to stop doing? Because there's a lot of things people do as well that they think are supportive, and they're not. And I try and always understand that they're coming from a good place. I understand the intention, but for somebody who's already in a position of fear, having just newly come out, or, for whatever reason, it's a lot harder to look at that person and say, okay, I understand where you're coming from. Like there's a quote from Nadia Bolz-Weber, and she's a Lutheran pastor. And she said, we preach from our scars, not from our wounds. meaning that we have to let some healing happen before we can have the productive conversations. If we are still the open wound, and coming out feels like walking around like an open wound, you've just exposed yourself. So, you know, not everyone is in the position to speak from their scars yet with that healing.
So I like to ask this question for authors near the end of the podcast.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask it in two ways.
Okay.
Question number one, what is your message to the world? Number
Just an
two,
easy little lob there.
I know,
Okay.
that's an easy one. The second one, what's your message to Hadlee? Because I'm listening as well.
Yeah. My message to the world. I guess my message would be to ask ourselves, would it be okay if I didn't know? Would it be okay if I didn't understand? And I know that sounds a little strange, but I think so much conflict comes from people standing in what they assume is certainty and knowledge about a certain situation. And I think if we can have the humility sometimes say, would it be okay if I didn't know this, if I wasn't the expert on this? The depth of conversation we could have.
Yeah. In all areas of life.
In all areas, it doesn't
Everything.
matter. It's not just LGBTQ. Like, it could be so healing. And also to just know that even if it doesn't seem like it, most people, if not all people, are trying their best. They're doing the best they can for where they are in life at that time. And that includes the people who react with hate or hard feelings. That may be the only response. All these feelings that they have inside that they don't know what to do with need an outlet, and that may have been the only outlet that they ever learned.
Yeah.
Doesn't
That's
make
powerful.
it right, doesn't mean we have to love it, but I believe in my heart that nobody wants to hate me.
Wow. Nobody's getting up in the morning and saying, I'm going to find that Joe and I'm going to
Where's
hate her
that
today.
Jillian Abby? I'm going to go throw eggs at her house, and I'll be like, "Oh, breakfast, thank you."
That's pretty powerful, Joe. Really. Okay.
Thanks. That
Not letting
came
you
from
off.
elsewhere too.
I'm not letting you off the hook.
Yep.
Question number two.
I am here for Hadlee. Knock, knock. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, no, I'm gonna come up with something really good. Hold on one second. No, gosh, Hadlee, I'm just so proud of you. I'm just so proud of you. Because she's had the courage to know who she is. And so many of us walk through this life not knowing who that person is.
Wow.
And I'm so proud of her for however she figured that out. Could have been TikTok, who knows? But you're gonna have such a beautiful future ahead of you. Just keep being who you are.
Good. And
keep showing up with love.
So when that message pops in your inbox from Hadlee, are you going to be okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, of course.
I can anticipate it's coming. So.
Yeah. I didn't think I was going to cry, Dave.
Come on.
I thought we were talking books.
Come on. I love your passion. I love what you're doing. Don't ever stop. Please don't stop. And my wife and I on a different podcast, we end the podcast by saying, let's keep this conversation going. I'm hoping that we can keep this conversation going between you and I as well.
Me too.
For Hadlee.
Absolutely.
And for everyone that says, I'm Hadlee.
Yeah.
And I got to go get a piece of cardboard and make this sign, I guess. Now.
Ah,
So thank you so much, Joe.
thank you, Dave.
I anticipate that you know that you've helped, but you've helped more than that. So thank you.
I've got a happy heart right now.
So do I. A grateful heart.
Yeah.
I'm watching your TikToks. Keep them coming. Don't you stop.
Okay, that's fine. I did make a commitment to my therapist that I would keep showing up because, I like to go into hiding too. Pretend nobody cares. Nobody wants to listen. She challenged me to keep showing up and then we connected. So there we go.
Sometimes things are just meant to happen.
Things are meant to happen. You
thank
just
you for
gotta show up.
Thank you for reaching out and making this happen.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Hadlee.